Today, I'm going to talk about McDonald's. It's a slightly more traditional case than perhaps some of the others that we hear today. It's maybe in the kind of pinball to tenpin bowling. It's a little bit more tenpin bowling. The Walker's case we're going to hear is probably 90% pinball, 10% tenpin bowling. I guess BBH, Super Social, Super Bowl thing is about 50-50. This is probably 100% tenpin bowling, and I think it gives us confidence. There are still other ways to do things. It's McDonald's are trying to learn how to do things in the new world, but I think there are also some kind of universal truths about marketing and connecting with customers that will withstand the test of time regardless of whatever medium we're playing in. So I have a story here today, which is difficult because it's an effectiveness paper, 3,000 words. How do I summarise that interestingly for an audience? I wanted to talk about some of the foundations for our success and the marketing framework that we created that really built that success for the brand, and also allowed us to judge our success, whether we're successful or not, and allowed us to tell the case and prove to the outside world that it was successful. And I've got a few observations as well about this extraordinary new thing called the CAN Creative Effectiveness Awards, which I think is the kind of future of effectiveness, really, and it's got the creative world very, very excited in a way that I think the more local effectiveness awards potentially haven't done in the past. So I think it's very important. So going back to the sort of mid-2000s, McDonald's was having a terrible, terrible time in the UK. The libel trial was showing just how untransparent the business was. Super Size Me, the film, was tearing strips off them. Fast Food Nation, the book, Jamie Oliver, the childhood obesity issue, was raving. America was not a popular place, burgers were not popular, animal welfare issues, or a perfect storm of issues were facing the brand. And the brand had not been protected by good brand advertising. It had been, essentially they'd been delivering lots and lots of promotional work, lots of new products, but nothing that really invested back in the brand that could protect it from this huge storm that it faced. So, having had 20-30 years of growth non-stop, the franchisees of McDonald's were irate because sales had flattened, and they had 4 or 5 whole years of completely flat growth, which, as you can imagine, a franchise organisation like McDonald's is a pretty tough situation to be in. I'm pretty glad I wasn't there at the time. New leadership was brought in, so Steve Easterbrook, man and boy McDonald's, and Jill McDonald, no relation to Ronald. She was a visionary brand marketer from BA. He was a McDonald's guy, but a realist. And this combination of realistic visionary, I think, is interesting because it sort of reminds me of the thing that Ben was talking about, which is moving on but not moving off the brand. They were not in denial about the fact that they were a burger company. They absolutely wanted to embrace that, but they also wanted to embrace the future and this idea of being modern and progressive. So they set a new vision for the business, which was good food fast from a modern progressive burger company. And everything they do now, those two words, modern and progressive, are at the heart of everything we try and do. There is a slow-moving, fairly kind of evolutionary kind of business. They've got 50-60 years of success on spotting what people do, not necessarily moving first, but getting things right operationally. And so I have no doubt that over the course of the next 5 years, McDonald's are going to move on and going to be able to, we'll be telling very exciting new modern kind of media stories like some of the ones you've heard today, although this one isn't one of those. The first thing they did was fix the fundamentals of the business, so they changed some of the recipes. Happy Meals had less salt, less fat, less sugar. They put in a new promotional calendar in place to really kind of shore up the basic day-to-day business of selling burgers. They fixed the franchisee relationships, which, as you can imagine, had begun to lose trust, and the franchisees had begun to lose confidence in the leadership of the business. And they began for the first time to engage with external stakeholders in the PR world, all the regulatory bodies, all the people that are terribly important when we're trying to manage all these kinds of issues. And those things were done well before any advertising or brand communication was even thought about. One of the biggest, most symbolic and fundamental changes that's kind of evident to customers is the restaurant refurbishment, which out went the primary colours, the reds, the yellows, in came greens and browns and woods and natural materials, a real symbolic piece of evidence that things are changing at McDonald's. And people actually surprisingly weren't cynical about this. It just felt like a really nice environment to be in. So it wasn't like people reacted and thought this was greenwash. And of course it wasn't greenwash, it was just a lovely way to develop the restaurant experience. And that's, and what we know is that the return on investment of those store updates has been just as successful as any of the brand advertising we've done. So it's been a phenomenal achievement itself, but probably the most symbolic piece of change that went on. So then we set about really getting under the skin of the customer issue. Leo Burnett undertook a usage and attitude study, proper old-fashioned piece of quant research, 3,000 panel of people, and we dug under the skin of the issues. And what we found was not a penetration issue. Lots and lots of customers were still going there. It was just a brand advocacy issue. Of all of the customers we had, lots of very frequent customers just didn't like us very much, and that was suppressing frequency a little. And we weren't getting the double benefit of having customers who really love you, recommending you to their friends, and telling everybody to go down to McDonald's. So there was a suppression of frequency amongst the top end of customers. We found within this research that there were two key drivers that were causing this lack of brand advocacy. There were two weaknesses in the brand image, and they were trust. Company I trust was performing very poorly and dropped off significantly. And a place like someone like me, which we call our brand affinity measure, had also dropped off. And those are two separate but related big brand measures that we sought to focus on very heavily as issues to really solve the brand problem going forward. And what we then did was we completely kind of rebuilt the marketing model for McDonald's. And it's kind of a bit off-centre, hasn't it? What we did was we created 4 pillars: value, variety, favourites, and trust. Now, value and variety is about telling people about the great value McDonald's is. It's such a fundamental part of their brand. Variety was a fundamental business driver: new products, exciting people with new launches. You couldn't forget those two things. Those two things were the basic drivers of everyday business, everyday sales at McDonald's. But what we needed to do was to build in 2 extra new components that had been probably kind of overlooked and had been not invested in. One of those is the core of the brand, the things that people really love about the brand, the favourites, as we called them internally. And then the other component is trust. So trying to tell some of the new and surprising stories about the brand that may not be the reasons you love it. Nobody loves McDonald's because they have organic milk or free-range eggs or British beef. They love it because they just love Big Macs and fries. But those things that can begin to tell you different things about the brand and push it in this direction, put it in the kind of in the modern direction. So 4 mutually exclusive pillars that we built our whole marketing plan around. 100 million worth of spend a year, equally divided into those 4 buckets. So drive sales by demonstrating great value, drive sales by announcing new product news, brand activity to solve the brand affinity problem, and brand activity to solve the brand trust problem. Those 2 new things on the right being what I'm going to focus a bit more on now. So what we did with favourites, which is the heart of the can effectiveness story, is essentially find out all those things that make people love the brand and remind them of it. Very simple, basic marketing to tell your critical people the things that your brand lovers love about you. And in trust, enlightening people by telling surprising stories about the brand's food and its corporate behaviour, its environmental policies, etc. Our trust campaign has had 4 chapters to date, starting with a thing called Planting, which was about celebrating all the wonderful British ingredients that can be found in a Happy Meal. Big Nothing, which was about celebrating the British beef in all of McDonald's burgers. Weather, which was about celebrating the 17,500 British farmers that supply McDonald's food. And then the latest chapter, which I'll show the brand film in a second, which took those food stories on and added a kind of corporate behaviour component into them. So for the first time, beginning to tell some of those environmental training and development and people policies, all the things that are undiscovered about the brand that can make you think slightly differently about it. So if we could play the film.
A is for the apples in our fruit bags. B is for the 100% British and Irish beef in our burgers. C is for the used cooking oil we recycle into biodiesel for our trucks. E is for eggs, free range eggs. G is for, give or take, how many British and Irish farmers supply our ingredients. And H for the hours we spend on average training our staff each day. J is for the juicy chicken breast we only ever use. K is for L and M. L for our little patrols, and M for the miles and miles they walk each day. And here's NOPQRS. That's kids. U is for others and the lovely organic milk they put in our bottles. B is for all the volunteers we're helping train for London 2012. W is for where we get nearly all the potatoes for our fries. X marks the spot. Why? Because they taste super. And then they said, that's what makes McDonald's.
So our trust advertising was the first kind of ingredient, our first new commitment to really investing back in the brand and pushing it in this more modern direction. And that's a pretty comprehensive telling of most of the stories that McDonald's had to tell. And we're very, very proud of it. It's as successful as the very first campaign we did 3 or 4 years ago. So it's a long and developing story, and we're kind of into planning the 5th chapter of that story right now. Our favourite advertising is all about driving brand affinity, reminding people why they love the brand, talking about all those kind of little insights that everybody has, all those stories that people have about I always steal somebody's fries, or I don't like gherkins, so I take the gherkin out. Or the straws in McDonald's, I blow them and use them as a pea shooter. And really trying to reconnect with people through playing back to them the things that they know and love about this brand and always have. Perhaps kind of forgotten through the difficult times of the mid-2000s. So it's just about bringing those things back to the front of mind, really. And we're now into our sort of fifth chapter of this campaign. And it's performing extremely well for us. The film I'm about to show is a new kind of string to our bow, which is within this world of favourites, talking specifically to parents, to those parents that may go to McDonald's with their kids, and their kids are probably happily having a happy meal, but maybe they're a bit suspicious about things and aren't really getting into it, and aren't really feeling it's a brand for them. And by showing the fun and joy on their children's faces, getting them to loosen up a little bit. So, within our brand campaigns, we have 2 strands. One which is more informative and about facts, and more rational, and that's about removing the barriers to coming, and one strand which is about just reminding people why they really love McDonald's, or why they should love McDonald's, or why they used to love McDonald's, and that's clearly much more emotional. And you can't really have one without the other. You need to do both sides of that story. It's possible to trust something but not love it. It's possible to love something but not really trust it. And so those two components are really fundamental to the reconnecting that we've done with our customers in the UK. We've seen, apologies for disguising the actual scores, this is a McDonald's confidentiality thing, but we've seen great improvements on each of the brand measures that we use to measure each of our pillars. So a value measure, an affinity measure, a trust measure, and a representation of the great choice that the menu offers. And quite extraordinary success. Actually, I think Q3 has dipped back up a little bit. So whilst it looks like we kind of peaked, I think we're not quite down yet. But it's all going over the long term incredibly well. And from a business perspective, 2007 was a watershed year. The flat plateauing of growth that we'd seen 2002 to 2006 has ended. 2007 was a record year. 2008 beat that. 2009 beat that. 2010 beat that again. We've had 23 consecutive quarters of growth, and we're currently around 9% sales year to date. So it's about 10, I think, an average about 10% up over that whole period for each year. So it's really quite an amazing turnaround, and we continue to accelerate our growth, despite the fact that the British High Street is screwed. I mean, the shops on the High Street, 40% are empty in some places, so footfall is down, and our market share is greatly up within a fairly flat market. And I guess the real reason for being here is we've got one of these, which was a very proud moment for us to go for a plan to be invited to the stage of Cannes to go and pick up an award was great. I said it's the first one of these ever awarded. Of course, Adam, when he comes up, will say that his was the inaugural Grand Prix, and that beats that. It was first because I was the first person to be given one of the six, not because it was better than the other six. So it's a great thing. It made me look at the IPA, the UK IPA, slightly differently. The IPA suddenly felt a little bit small. Maybe I had my head turned by the glamour and the bikinis and the yachts of Cannes, but I want to go back, and so we'll be working to achieve that. We'll be back next year because none of our work got a Cannes line this year for creativity. And of course that is one of the preconditions of getting to the Cannes Creative Effectiveness Awards. You have to have won an award the previous year, so I'm aiming for 2013 now. The thing about Cannes versus the IPA Effectiveness Awards, I guess, was a watershed moment in effectiveness globally. 1980, they were instituted. Probably, maybe it sounds a bit UK-centric to say this, but it was a really big moment in the advertising world generally, and now there's decades of cases there to compare ourselves against. But this new category is more important than that. It's truly global in a way that the IPA and other local market effectiveness awards will probably never be. It's proven the effectiveness of already proven creativity, so really making that link. The IPA in the UK isn't that interested in the quality of the creative work, they're interested in the quality of the strategy, but I'd say of the IPA awards that I got, none of it, the creative work was that good, the strategy was good and the results were excellent, but the creative Effectiveness Awards really kind of top the IPA in terms of really being interested in creativity. And another thing to say is really the creative world is just embracing, I think, this category. When I was a colleague of Adam's at AMV, I saw him the day after the awards at Cannes, and he was telling me that Dave Droga of Droga 5 in the US was pointing at his Grand Prix saying, "I want one of those." Now, if Dave Droga wants one of those, then you can bet your life that every other creative in the business wants one of those. So we better be we better be prepared, I think. And the UK has perhaps had an unfair advantage at Cannes this year. We won more than our fair share, perhaps because of our experience at writing IPA papers, but that will erode. I know that Spain had a pretty good hefty chunk of papers that were submitted too. So it's the unnatural advantage that the UK has had will disappear. So the case itself, it's as I said, it's hard to do an effectiveness case in an interesting way, but I'll try. So the business problem, 44% of visits were from users who are either neutral or critical to the brand. I think when they discovered this, they must have been pretty shocked actually. So many of their customers were so lacking in love for them and just coming for so many functional and rational reasons, because McDonald's is there on my street, I pass it on my way to work, it's convenient, it's cheap. None of those really emotional things that we want to hear as marketers. So our marketing objective was very simple. It was to create more brand advocates, turn frequent users into frequent advocates of the brand. One clear communications objective, to improve brand affinity by which we measure with the brand image statement that plays for someone like me. It's a measure that's really just about that emotional connection that you have with the brand when you feel it's for you. It's very simple. In other words, the emotional bond between McDonald's and its customers had been so strong, had weakened. We need to get people to fall in love with McDonald's all over again. Specific measures of success would be a 5% improvement on this brand affinity measure. A pretty tall order for what was going to be a 6-week burst of TV with some posters attached. And a very challenging 5.8% year-on-year sales increase for that period. The business had to sell it to franchisees not only as a long-term brand improvement thing, but also as a sales driver. And that was a gamble because we didn't know whether that would happen. We had no evidence that it was going to work, that we could do both at the same time. But we had to, in order to get it through the business, we had to say yes, we do that. We had to sign up to that objective. So the idea that the first favourites campaign put out there was the People's Restaurant. So it was about reminding people why they'd fallen in love with McDonald's in the first place, by celebrating everything they love about it. It's part of the fabric of Britain. It's reliable, democratic, welcoming, and always there for you. I think it's something that we all recognise to be true of McDonald's. When you see the golden arches, you feel a sense of familiarity. It's a haven, it's a place that you know you'll get a very consistent and loved product and experience at the end of it, no matter where you are in the world. And we wanted to sum that up in a way that was going to be very true of this kind of the fact that it's a real fabric brand, it's part of the culture in Britain. And I think the film that we're about to see really does sum that up.
Now the labourers and cablers and council motion tablers were just passing by. And the coffee types and scoffy types and like their coffee frothy types were just passing by. Those on their own whilst on the phone, ducking up nuggets and having a moan were just passing by. The driving through with hungry crew who just pulled off the A through 2 were just passing by. And the IT boys with taps and prods, eating a Big Mac whilst writing their blogs were just passing by. And the first-in types, and lurking types, and like to lose their gherkin types, and suddenly just bursting types, were just passing by. And the extroverts, and the introverts, and guys in newly ironed shirts who like to text outrageous flirts were just passing by. And the little folk who share a joke and nudge and poke about that bloke who slurps his coke and gives his goatee beard a stroke were just passing by. There's a McDonald's for everyone.
So that was just passing by. It was highly critically lauded. It obviously won at Cannes in 2010. The thing about it is, if you watch it without the sound, I was very worried the sound wouldn't work today, it's nothing. Absolutely nothing. It just looks like any old footage that anybody could shot in a restaurant. It's verbal and it's poetic. It's not big CGI, it's not massive hyperbole, and we see a lot of that, don't we? It's very simple, very to the point, quite intelligent, but just a lovely film with great craft skills in it. And I think just the care and attention that's in that film verbally is something that says an awful lot about what McDonald's really believe about themselves. It was accompanied by some outdoor, which was much more focused on product insights, so celebrating the individual products and why they're iconic and why people love them. The only super social aspect of this whole campaign really was the fact that the Gherk in or Gherk out poster, I don't know if that translates, I don't think if that works in Spanish. That one got an awful lot of followers, and tens of thousands of people liking it on Facebook, spontaneously by somebody that just put it up there on Facebook. And I think that sort of thing has woken up McDonald's to the potential of trying to see that themselves and do those kind of things more actively rather than passively. Very simple and traditional media plan, 6 weeks of TV, two different cut downs of the ad, 7 outdoor executions spread out over 2 bursts of 2 weeks, with a spend of £7.7 million. So pretty heavyweight spend. McDonald's do that, they don't do things by halves. They wouldn't have the confidence yet to only spend 1.4 million on a campaign. But when they start hearing cases like the Valley one, they will begin to do that, and that's going to be an interesting world for them. Claire Bill from the campaign liked it, and she picked up on the poetry of it, which I think is self-evident, the direction of it and the warmth in it. Customers, I think this is the real test of it. Customers started writing letters, emailing, phoning the customer care line, saying things like, just seen your completely brilliant ad, I'm a fast food hater, but I had to try again. I'd like to congratulate you on your latest TV advert, definitely the best one ever, totally suited the British psyche. So really showing that this was connecting with people on a very kind of emotional level that hadn't been the case with previous McDonald's advertising up to that point, or since the late 90s. Our ad tracking showed that all of our key measures were performing way above the average for any of our campaigns. So recognition, creative resonance by which we meant enjoyability, the messaging of it, and their motivation was also up. So it was both really communicating the right things and being enjoyed, and actually selling it as well. Within our ad tracking, we could see that versus all of our other campaigns, this statement is talking to people like me, a measure of relevance, was way higher than any of our other campaigns, but particularly Big Nothing, which was our trust campaign. So you can see that those two things are doing different things. Both the favourites and the trust campaigns were running at the same time. So this is quite important to us to see that actually, with the next bit of data, where we see our pre and post, our brand image measures shifting, we could be pretty certain that was because of this campaign and not the other, because Big Nothing and the trust campaigns don't tend to correlate with relevance for a mainstream audience, with mums a little bit, but not so much with a mainstream audience. They don't do that affinity job that our favourites advertising does. So this is quite a key bit of data, I think, in the paper that really proved that this was doing a job that nothing else in our plan was doing. And we beat our sales targets, 7.8% sales. It was at that point the highest performing sales promotion, they call it sales promotion internally, of anything they'd done. So they're very confident at that point that we were going to be able to do this brand and sales job at the same time. Importantly for McDonald's, they saw great uplifts on their core menu. So 44% of those sales uplifts came from what they call EVM, which is extra value meals, which is the holy trinity of burger, fries, and Coke. And sales on other bits of the menu, but mainly on those core menu items. So it really was having a great effect on the thing that we really wanted to sell most of all. And kind of in terms of ROI, as you expect from an effectiveness case, we were able to prove that there was both a short-term and a long-term return on investment. £3.39 in the short term, and somewhere between £7 and £9 in the longer term on a media spend of 7.7 million. So somewhere between 50 and 65 million pounds worth of extra sales just for a 6-week piece of activity. And we're now in our 5th chapter of our favourite campaign, so you can times that by 5. Let's be conservative, let's say 250 million. You can add that to our trust campaigns, which are just as old and selling even harder. So let's be conservative again, £500 million worth of sales impact from 2 completely new pieces of activity since 2009. So really proving that the old thing you can actually do branded sales at the same time. It wouldn't be an effectiveness case without doing the eliminating other factors bit. It's just the factors within our econometric model, the competitive activity, our other campaigns, weather, school holidays, all those things. I want to do the due diligence for you. And importantly, when you root it back to our very original objective, which was to create more advocates, over 2 years, so not necessarily just because of this one campaign, but because of the campaign over the 2 years, we've seen pretty big shifts in the numbers of visits coming from brand advocates. So we've got more advocates, more frequent advocates, and more medium and light advocates. So really taking that back to the very original objective. So just to wrap up, I think this case, it's a very simple case in a world of really complex marketing communications, and I think it shows that it's still possible to do simple things in a complex world. And I guess Yo Valley is not complex; it's just adds a social element to it. It's possible to remind people of something. There's the sexier brand challenges that we often think about, disrupting and challenging and all those kind of really exciting verbs. Sometimes just a really good reminder can work for you. Humility versus hyperbole. To say people are just passing by McDonald's is a remarkably humble, soft sell thing to say. It doesn't overplay McDonald's role in the world. It doesn't say McDonald's will change your life. It just says it's really nice, convenient, nice experience, nice food. So I think that there's a humility in there, which maybe the brand needed to have, and I think maybe we can step forward a little bit, be a bit more confident in the kind of brand statements that we make now, and we're beginning to do that. But the time was absolutely right that we were going to be humble. Interestingly, the clients at the time wanted it to be just popping in, not just passing by. They wanted it to be more active, and we fought against that. I think that was a good decision because it would have changed the meaning of the advertising, I think. And then poetry versus visual spectacle. It's simple, verbal, intelligent. It's not a massive, multi-million-pound production number. And we all see those all the time, don't we? Endless licensed characters in other yogurt ads, like Muller in the UK. There's a thing that's just broken up called the yogurt wars as a result of Yo Valley in the UK. And Muller are having very interesting attempts trying to compete with Yo, and it doesn't really seem to work. They're chucking lots of money at the problem, and I think that proves that just simplicity and something a bit more intelligent can work sometimes. What we were told afterwards about why this case was able to win out of the 140 that were submitted, it was a well-written case, and I was pleased that they said that because it was a beautifully written TV commercial, and we had to write a case that was as simply put and as nicely put as the advertising itself. Unlike many other papers, apparently we focused only on proving that we had achieved our objectives. We didn't get seduced by trying to tell all sorts of other stories about the other things that have happened in the world as a result, unprovable things that you couldn't really show as a result of advertising. We were just completely focused on these were our 2 or 3 objectives, and these are the numbers that absolutely prove that happened in the real world. We, of course, had econometrics. to prove the business impact. And I think that's just the fundamental lesson of effectiveness cases, really. It's much, much easier when you've got econometrics to write a case that is going to stand up against a jury and not be questioned. The kinds of intellectual kind of pyrotechnics you have to do if you don't have econometrics are very hard and very laborious. And sometimes we don't have that time or glucose to do those things. So we were very lucky that we had econometrics.